life can hit like a sledgehammer. But guess what? We hit back harder. Welcome to Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrived. I'm Jennifer Rogers, your no BS guide to turning life's toughest moments into badass victories. Ready to flip the script? Let's affirm that life can be a bitch, but somehow we thrive. Welcome back to today's episode of Affirm That Shit. I'm your host, Jennifer Rogers, and today we have a special guest, Terry Healey. Terry is not just a survivor of cancer, he is the picture of resilience and strength. After facing the challenges of his cancer diagnosis, including changes in his own appearance, he's here today to talk to us about his journey and how it spoke volumes into self-acceptance, inner beauty, and the importance of affirming your own worth in the face of adversity. But before we meet Terry, let's hear his affirmations. So I invite you now, in your space and place, to take a moment, take a deep breath in, let it out, and repeat these affirmations with me. My scars tell a story of survival and courage. They are symbols of my resilience, not my limitations. My scars tell a story of survival and courage. They are symbols of my resilience, not my limitations. My scars tell a story of survival and courage. They are symbols of my resilience, not my limitations. I am a warrior who triumphed over adversity. I am a warrior who triumphed over adversity. I am a warrior who triumphed over adversity. I am a testament to hope and perseverance. I am a testament to hope and perseverance. I am a testament to hope and perseverance. Stay with us. After this break, we'll meet Terry.
Hi, my name is Connie Walton,
And I'm Jennifer Rogers.
and together we are the co-founders of the Sacred Uturi Collective.
Sacred Uturi Collective invites you to come spend time with us March 2026 in this beautiful home in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. It's a retreat where you will find yourself in a quiet space with your soul sisters, reliving, replenishing, and reigniting your soul.
To find out more, visit our website at sacreduturicollective.com to snag your ticket to this beautiful retreat. It's a once in a lifetime and you don't want to miss it.
Hi, Terry. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Affirm That Shit. How are you?
Great, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. And I will say that your story is one that I am looking forward to hearing today because with your cancer diagnosis, there is not one family, friend, coworker, person that we've passed across the street that has not been touched by cancer. Whether we've walked that road ourselves, whether we've supported someone in their care journey, or we have been the caretaker, right?
Absolutely.
So today, I'm interested in you diving right in with us, our viewers, our listeners, and taking us to your shit story and telling us somehow you thrived. How did you do that?
How did I thrive? Well, I try not to take a lot of credit for it because I was surrounded by so many incredible people. Uh, I was I was blessed to not only be surrounded by a great medical team at every stage in the process. They gave me hope, truly, but I also had an incredibly supportive family and friends. So I had a very close-knit group that was around me. And I would say the third thing was finding people that I didn't know when I went to group therapy, right? Because that's really when the light bulb went off for me, Jennifer, and when I realized that when you talk to people that you don't know, that's where you find real courage to share your vulnerabilities and you learn so much more about yourself. So, gifted for all of that. I was somebody that came up with my own survival kit. I'm deep into, I'm a very reflective person, introspective. So there were a number of things that went into it, but those were definitely gifts I was given.
Terry, before we started our episode today, and with every guest, I tune in and connect and feel your energy. That's part of our pre call question, right? And what I was feeling with you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you are that person that is very empathetic. Like you feel that energy, you can bring that in, but you're also the person that can give that energy back. And I think probably your survival toolkit that you're talking about is one way that you do that. It seems as though you share your gifts with others, whether it's through sharing your story, whether it is that listening ear, whether it is, hey, brother, sister, I've walked this road and I know where you're traveling, and let me help you along the way. Would you identify with being that giving person?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on. I think when we experience major adversity, one of the gifts in disguise is empathy, right? I think we learn so much about ourselves, and one of the things is we become more empathetic. And one of the great things that I gained from it and a purpose that came out of this ordeal was just that, right? Finding empathy and being able to help people who are scared, people that are frightened of the journey they're on. Believe it or not, Jennifer, it in the era when I went through this, it was sort of pre-internet, right? So your connections, the platforms that you could connect to people were very limited. And so because I had such a rare situation that created that left me with a permanent facial difference, there weren't that many people out there. Today, there are a whole lot of people out there that connect with me in so many different ways. And oftentimes they're very young people like I was, and so it's a true gift to be able to share with them and just listen to them mostly, listen to their concerns, and if they want guidance or advice, I share it with them, but mostly I listen.
And I want to start right there with you, Terry, because you're right. The internet has opened so many doors for those connections. And that wasn't your story. So,
Right.
why don't you take us into your story of your diagnosis, your facial scars that you carry today, and then the love that you share and what you're doing. So, dive right in
All right.
with you where you
O- Okay. Yeah. So I'll take you back to about 1984, a long time ago. And I was, what I would say, what I always say is I was living life on easy street. I had sort of the world by the tail. And I was 21 years old, and out of nowhere, this bump formed behind my right nostril. I didn't even notice it. I wasn't that vain, right? It was other people that said, "Hey, your right nostril's flaring out. Is everything all right?" So the long story short was I did get a diagnosis eventually that what I had was this really rare form of cancer called a fibrosarcoma. Sarcomas are very rare. So I was blessed that I got the right diagnosis. A lot of times people don't. And then the treatment goes wonky, right? Because they don't know how to treat it. But when I was first diagnosed, it wasn't that big of a deal. I was told, hey, we caught this in the early stages. Yeah, it's in your face, but we can remove it. We can take care of this with surgery. And that's what they did. So I went back to my life after this surgery. I mean, I had a few stitches on the outside and the inside, but everything came back to normal. I looked just as I had been before. 6 months later is when I began to feel these tingling sensations in my cheek. And that's when I went back to my doctor, and he looked at me and examined me, and he didn't he was going to put me through a CAT scan and all this stuff, but he knew right away that this was a major recurrence, and he got the wheels in motion. And at that point, I had a surgery really quickly that resulted in the removal of half of my nose, the shelf of my right eye, the muscle and the bone from my right cheek, part of my upper lip, part of my hard palate, and 6 of my teeth. And I woke up attached to my chest because they had transplanted a full thickness skin graft from my chest to fill in this huge cavity that had been created in my face. And that's when the reality really struck, because when I originally was diagnosed with cancer, it was such a positive, oh, we got this, don't worry about it. And I'm 21, I was invincible. So honestly, yes, I was freaked out by the diagnosis. I was concerned, I prayed a lot, but I wasn't nearly as freaked out, obviously, as when this thing recurred. And when I looked at myself, I realized that not only was I facing now this major ordeal, this life-threatening situation, but now I'm 21 years old and I'm completely disfigured. So that was really difficult, obviously, for me, and I tried to keep a positive attitude. I was fortunate that my doctor was somebody that I connected with really well. Great guy. In fact, I still see him to this day, believe it or not. He he was pretty quick to look at me and say, "Hey, we're gonna get this." And he also was quick to tell me that he was going to get me back to who I was before, that he was going to make me what he called streetable. Right now, maybe somebody else would have said, "What do you mean by that? What's streetable mean?" I didn't ask. I just made assumptions in my own mind, but I thought acceptable. I thought nothing terrible. And so that gave me hope. I'll tell you, between prayer, which gave me a lot of hope, between my medical team, which gave me hope, regardless of whatever the final outcomes were, right? That was instrumental in helping me to move forward and find that initial resilience to kind of bounce back. So yeah, that was the beginning, Jennifer, of my journey, I would say, where I didn't know what was coming next, right? And I had no idea the path that I would go down at that point and how I would ultimately find a way out of it. So it was a long story.
It it's a devastating story to hear because we're thinking 21, right? You're just starting that adulthood. You're just starting this. And I'll be honest with you, I would struggle with having to look at myself and continue to have a positive attitude. So, you sharing that, I just took this day by day and this is how it went is amazing. Because one, to receive a diagnosis such as yours at such a young age, you just had this compounded on you.
Yeah.
So when you look at how far you've come, and we say 1984, that's crazy,
Before
oh
you
my
were
gosh.
born. Yeah, I know.
You're so kind. You're so kind, but I was already born.
Oh, well, I wouldn't have known that.
I'll let my looks trick you. How about that? I just love having you here, Terry. Your energy is so good. And I love that you kept that positive outlook. I love that you dove into what kept you going and to speak on that relationship of your physician and still having that person in your life today speaks to that volume of who's pouring into you, who's looking out for you, who's taking care of you. When you were walking along this path, did you find that your friends, family members, those that you were once close to, Was it hard for them to accept your journey as easy as it was for you? Because we know sometimes when there's hard conversations or hard things to say, people either one, don't say anything at all, or they
Yeah.
disappear from our life. Did you feel that along your journey?
I experienced all those things you just talked about, Jennifer. I had very close friends who disappeared. I guess it was too much for them to handle. I had people that were incredibly supportive that, just rallied and made me feel so special and made me feel like I was no different. But I also will say that, and this is where I brought up earlier how important going to group therapy was for me and meeting people that didn't know me and wouldn't just reinforce me all the time. And that was the downside of family and friends, right? So a quick example for you is at one point I said, I'm disfigured. I said this to my family and they said, "Oh no, you look great." And I go, "Come on now." And basically it was this discussion that led to, well, you don't need therapy. And I said, well, I do need therapy. And they said, well, no, you don't need therapy. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't have any problems. That's for people with problems. And so that's what hit me, Jennifer, at a certain point, was that I realized in some ways I got to figure out this journey on my own, right? Because I can't have people telling me that there's nothing wrong with me because I feel it every day. And so, yeah, I definitely went down a path for 6 years where it wasn't a straight path or an upward path. It was a downward path where I was losing my confidence. I was losing my self-esteem because I just didn't feel good about myself. And I was desperately trying to find ways to rebuild who I was. And again, going back to what I said about being introspective and reflective, that's when I really sat down and thought about all these things that I could do for myself, that I knew enough about myself that I would respond to these things and they would help me to rebuild who I was over time. And I can talk about those things really briefly if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think those are the important things, those things that carried you.
Yeah, and so I already mentioned my faith, right? So that was critical. I mentioned having teams of people around me that I trusted, but we also just talked about the downside of that. I was somebody, though, Jennifer, that was very focused, blessed to be somebody that could focus really well and set goals. When you set goals and you don't get overwhelmed by your goals and you achieve those, or they're goals that are more about overcoming a challenge, in my case, and how to get there, you gain confidence step by step. That was instrumental. This concept of mindful positivity wasn't just this natural thing that came to me, but I would say that I started every day with gratitude, grateful for what I did have, right? There's a million things that we can be grateful for, despite whatever bad things are happening in our life. When you start with positivity, it makes everything easier, right? You start to look at life differently. As I always say, and other people say, attitude is a choice. You choose your attitude. Um, and I would say, I started to focus on things like balance, trying to find life balance. I was really good about uncovering outlets that could relieve my daily stressors, morning outlets, evening outlets, take my mind off the stressors and the concerns that I was dealing with. And then I would say I go back to group therapy. We already talked about that, instrumental in my healing. So grateful for that. And then finally, the one thing that sort of goes along with positivity is I was very into positive imaging and visualization. And when you use visualization in a way that you're sort of imagining where you're going to be in 3 years, right? And you start to sort of visualize what your life's going to look like. Uh, Not only did that help build my confidence back, but it also gave me the ability, I think, to just calm and soothe my nerves when I was so anxious about my next procedure or about the next recurrence that might come. And so it was a lot about those little things that helped me rebuild my confidence, that helped me, I think, rediscover who I was and to start to feel better about who I was and get to the point where 5 or 6 years later, I finally reached a point of contentment. I became content with who I was and said to myself, I'm not doing surgery anymore. And so I stopped doing surgery. But there was a woman that I
Can I
met.
ask you, Terry, how many
Yeah.
surgeries have you had?
I had over 30. So over this 5, 6 year period of post-cancer, I had 25 just reconstructive procedures. My case was very complex. That's what I kept hearing. That word complexity came up with every doctor I went to. Well, your case is complex, which was sort of my reminder that maybe this isn't going to work out as well as it could. But I met a woman who literally changed my life and changed my attitude and approach that put me on a totally different path. So again, blessed for her.
I want to ask because I'm very much a visual person as well. What is one vision that you still carry with you today that brought you through those moments?
Now let me just clarify the question. So when you say one vision, um, what do you mean exactly?
Is there a vision that you had all those years ago that played in your mind that this is where I'm going, this is what I'm getting through? Do you
Yeah.
still carry one of those visions with you today?
I would say that my goal in life was to my vision was, you know what, I'm not going to, I wasn't somebody that wanted to look really, really long term. So vision is a tough word for me to glom onto here. I was somebody that was very focused on nearer term
Mm.
objectives because it kind of goes back to the focus and goal oriented thing that I had. I felt like it was one step at a time. And I didn't know where my journey was really taking me, but I knew that if I could just focus on the next year and these objectives or these goals, then I would be in a better place in a year. And then let's see where I am in a year, and I'll take it one step at a time. But my vision was, and I will answer the question, is that I did believe I was going to get through this. I did believe I'd come out the other side. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but it was one step at a time.
And I think that is the perfect answer for those that are going through their own challenges in life. They're facing their own difficulties, that you don't have to have that long-term vision. Just what's the next step?
Yeah.
Because you said it earlier, with each step that you complete, that confidence comes back one moment at a time.
Yeah. And I do think that you make a great point, Jennifer. People get overwhelmed, I think, oftentimes when they're in the midst of these journeys of their own. And that's natural. It's human, right? So that's why I like to share these toolkits and my rebar framework and all these things to help other people not get overwhelmed, but to kind of put things into phases, if you will, and not think about everything that you've got to do. But what do I need to focus on at this stage of my journey? And then what would I do if I get through that? Then what's the next step? So that's how I try to help people
And
through.
that completely defines that life balance, right? We've all heard
Yeah,
of work-life balance, but this specifically talks to that life balance.
yeah,
And I know in just hearing a portion of your story, because there's so much behind 30 surgeries, right? There's so much behind 1984 to 2025 and who Terry is today. But there are going to be listeners and viewers who want to hear more, who want to connect with you. So, Terry, tell us today, how can they do that? And then what are you doing to continue on lighting up the world?
yeah. Well, I am blessed that I have this purpose in my life to focus on delivering this kind of message and hoping to inspire other people along the way. My next book, The Resilience Mindset, is coming out on September 9th, so I'm excited about that. There's a bunch of events that are coming up in the Bay Area and in Bend, Oregon, that I'm doing in the near term. Yeah, there's more information about me at www.terryhealey.com. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. Instagram is Terry Healey US, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Yeah, I'm just really excited to finally release this book called The Resilience Mindset, because Jennifer, this is something that I wrote in response to the people that listened to me speak over the last 20 years, because they would say, well, you wrote this memoir at face value and we read that. But the things you talk about, the toolkits, the frameworks that help us, you need to write a workbook. You need to write another book. And so now that I'm 100% focused on this purpose, I'm no longer really doing the full-time high-tech world. I can dedicate myself to this and get this out there in the hands of other people. So.
And I so appreciate you doing that work, Terry, and leading with your heart's passion.
Yeah.
I want to tell you thank you for being an amazing guest on today's episode of Affirm That Sh.
Thanks for the great conversation, Jennifer. Appreciate you.
You just took another step towards owning your story and thriving against all odds. This is Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrived. If you're ready to keep kicking ass, subscribe now and let's keep breaking barriers together. Remember, life's a battle, but somehow you'll thrive.